Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So I noticed that my podcast for today didn't go up. So I dropped one that's supposed to go down for tomorrow. But I wanted to talk about this anyway. There's been a new court case that came out. It has to do with cannabis. And I think it's interesting because this cannabis guy, Oklahoma just turned down recreational marijuana or cannabis. But in that same state, this case was there. And what this case did, and I spoke about this on this podcast a little bit, what it was is a dispensary owner was deprived of his rights because he was a dispensary owner and was carrying a gun. Now, in the 2A, the two things don't match and you can't have them in the same space. I know this because I've taken up this and I'm manufacturing cannabis products. So I have to work in a gun-free zone and I can't use the products I make, but I can make them. There's nothing prohibiting me from making these things for people to enjoy. I see myself as a craftsman, as a fine brewer, but for the cannabis industry. And my business is actually designed to be a services industry in the cannabis space because there's a lot of growth potential in New Mexico in that space. So this case has interested me. But what is interesting about it is that the ruling came down and set precedent now that he won, basically. And basically what he was saying is that they were using historical old laws for intoxication, and they didn't hold up to scrutiny when they were talking about these, going, yeah, this doesn't work for modern society. They were using laws from the 1700s, from the founding of our country, and from Reconstruction era after the Civil War, to prohibit the use of marijuana or cannabis. And this sets precedents, and a good precedent that I think will actually change the landscape. I personally think that cannabis is okay. I mean, I was in high school, I did inhale. I know that it's no different than alcohol. I can say that was one of the driving forces with me getting into that business is because I've become an ANCAP, meaning that I don't really like the government as much as I used to. And I think that helping to end prohibition kind of spoke to me, and that's why I started down that path. Now, with this, it goes to say, without saying, that you have probably seen the drama unfold with Bud Light and what's going on with them. To be fair, I have no problems with drag. I do have a problem with a TikTok star whose primary audience are young kids who aren't even adult yet, with them promoting drinking to them and that kind of lifestyle to them without them having any safety checks. That's my own personal bias. I personally think that's where it is. I also would say that Bud Light is probably the crappiest beer anyway. I'm a beer guy. I like Sam Adams. I've always liked Sam Adams, but I like Marzens. I like, or Märzen, the correct way to say it in German, which are kind of like Octobers. I like stouts. I like beer with flavor. So Bud Light's never been a thing for me anyway. So this is all, superfluous to me anyway. But it's the first time I've ever seen conservatives, having been one for most of my life until recently, where I would look at this and say, wow, they have some backbone. So far they've cost about $6 billion of profit shedding. And what we need is that to stick more. The right funds the left, and that's being proven right now. And with that, we need to make sure we're putting our money where our mouth is. And I mean this, like, support those businesses that support us. And you're seeing the repercussions, and there have been ANCAPs like me and libertarians for years expounding these ideas, saying, hey, if you make them hurt financially, they'll change their tune or they'll get out of politics. Now, to me, it would be better if companies just stayed out of politics. There's no need for it. You can service both sides of the aisle and make a decent profit without getting woke points. But with that ESG stuff going on, the equity equity and social governance scores that they're trying to push. Woke corporations get points and get money from the government for following these, and they get access to capital following these woke ideals. And the only way we fight that, because our side will always be that guy, and I say that most of the people in the 2A don't agree with this stuff. We don't agree with you sexualizing kids or being around kids and doing any of these weird-ass acts. To that end, it's time to stand up. And the way you stand up is, simply put, don't give money to people that hate you. You know, I've talked about how I'm still consuming The Mandalorian, but let's just say I'm not paying for it. And no one I know is paying for it. I don't have an account that someone's giving me access to their stuff on the side. I'm getting it through other means. Why? Because I refuse to pay for something or to a corporation that hates me. And if you don't believe they hate you, look at the VP of what Budweiser said, that they were looking to attract a different demographic from their core audience right now. And then you flash up and you see things protesting in Canada. This is different because the Canadians are usually pretty okay with themselves, so they protested the COVID stuff. But they're usually okay with the government. And there are kids in high schools in Canada that are protesting this trans movement to the point that they're getting a little militant. What does that say? That says to the people like Budweiser that even that audience you're trying to attract to get your product in the future when they can consume it, is changing tunes and changing directions right now. These are white pill moments. These are proud moments that we should all look at and go, we're winning. If you look at the scenarios right now, it looks bleak when you start looking at Washington state's gun laws and you look at how the left seems to dominate everything. But the fact of the matter is, we wouldn't know how corrupt the situation is or how bad the situation is if it weren't for modern media, if it weren't for modern people that had access to the information and had the means to spread the word. Case in point, New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. When you look at this podcast or you listen to this podcast, you know, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Check us out on Rumble. Rumble, I've had a little bit of a slowdown in posting content because they're not reviewing it to monetize it. I'm still not making anything from doing this. This is just a hobby, but I would like it to be a means to an ends to a means, so to speak, as I start my other business. But with that, it makes me think about where we're putting our money, where we're honestly doing this. And I appreciate all my listeners, whether you're on the audio cast or if you're on Rumble, because you are giving me hope. I am seeing numbers increase. I am seeing it being shared. I'm just asking that those that are new to this program get on board with everyone else. I can tell you for a fact that as much as this sounds hokey that I'm talking about cannabis and guns, the two relate. Because what happens is when they try to restrict you for one reason or another, whether it's cannabis or whether it's because they think you're a prohibited person because you had some mistakes in the past, these should go away. You're an American citizen. You've paid your time. In my opinion, you deserve your rights back. And that's the first thing we need to address in the United States is how we adjust fire here. And if you don't believe how corrupt the government can actually be and how insanely weird our government can be, all you have to do is look at the news that dropped today. They found the guy who leaked information, and turns out it's real information. And that we do have special forces on the ground, up to 100 in Ukraine. So all of us conspiracy-minded people, we knew this because, well, it was obvious. That's one. Two, the other revelation is that the Russians have only lost about 20,000 people. The reports from what we're hearing from the government, the White House, and all these other places are putting that number that the Russians are losing up to 200,000. Now, I don't know which one to believe, to be honest, because I have seen enough of what the Russians have done and have enough experience with military people, and I've had people from the military actually review some of this stuff with me, And the Russians have the ability to prosecute a war about like the Iraqis did in the first Gulf War. And I still stand behind that. But you throw enough man and material behind it, you can win. And the Russians have that advantage. The only reason why the Ukrainians are doing it halfway as well as they are right now is because of American involvement. And I mean that with troops now, but it also means with our weapons. And it makes me wonder, why are we doing this instead of sharpening our own spear? Because as we get closer and we're seeing things shake up in the ocean, in the Southeast Asia, we're seeing the Chinese right now getting very militant. And it makes sense that they're going to do something stupid. Now, I'm a firm believer that if they ever do that, we'd win handily, because there's a lot of people that think we would play nice. And I don't think we would. For instance, I think what we would do is put 2 carrier battle groups on the other side of the island chain. If you don't know what the first island chain is, it's past Japan, and the Chinese physically can't do that, even though they have more holes than us for ships. They cannot get past Japan. I think we would sit back past Japan, blockade their oil and food imports, and China would deindustrialize inside of 2 months. And they would be a piece of historical note, and that's it. If you think that we wouldn't do that, and the Chinese have a better navy than we do, they have 2 carrier battle groups. We have 23. 2 of which are of our newest, latest, greatest super carriers. These are not small units. One of them has enough military fighting force to destroy a country and flatten it. That's where we're at right now. Is if you look at what's going on, they're trying to devalue the American dollar and pull away from it and make us a multipolar pool in the world, or make a multipolar pool in the world so that it's not just the American dollar. And a lot of things in the world that could change things. That would be one, to some degree. It would change things for the rest of the world more so than the domestic audience. Think about this. The United States, the only thing we've ever had that we export energy and food. That we import mostly electronics and finished goods that are on the lower end that we no longer manufacture in the United States. I think that's about to change. That's my own personal opinion. I think that the American people are ravenous in what they want, and when we can't get it fully from everywhere else, we'll find a way to make it ourselves here. That's a good thing for the American manufacturing area. I think we're headed towards a recession. You can't look at inflation right now and see that we're not heading towards some economic bump of some kind that's going to be sustained and long-lasting. I think that we're already in a hot civil war. We are not in a kinetic civil war. We're in a 5th-generation civil war. And what do I mean by a 5th-generation civil war? We're in an information war. Right now, we're fighting each other to figure out what truth is. And where biological truth and real truth are one and the same. And there's no way to sidestep that. And this woke agenda keeps trying to push it, but they're going to fail. Because there's such a thing as the human eye and the human response. The only thing that fixes this is us backing up what we say, what we do, and putting our money where our mouth is, and not paying those that hate us. That gets hard, because there's a lot of corporations like Levi that came out and said they want to stop gun violence. How do you get around without wearing their jeans? Well, you have to settle for something a little different. What we need to do is find that parallel economy system and put our money where our mouth is. You don't like Bud Light because of what they're doing? Why not try something from the local brew house? I'm pretty sure the local brew guys would have a way for you to take it home. 1. 2, you would be supporting local people who are manufacturing or making some of the most excellent craft beers that exist. 3, they probably have a beer flavor that would be right up your alley. And I say that because I know that the two brew houses in Farmington have something similar to a Pils or to a weak Budweiser or a Coors that I'm sure would appeal to your palate if that's what you like. I like bready or doughier beers or more malty beers myself. We live in interesting times, and that's a curse. There's an old curse that comes from China, I believe, where it says, may you live in interesting times. We live in interesting times now. How do we adapt and adjust? Like, share, subscribe, be great.